Welcome to the HR Empowerment Podcast, where we will uncover strategies and new insights from HR professionals who discuss up-to-date regulations, best practices, and the most pressing topics like diversity and equity, leadership, dealing with difficult situations, and much more that affect your bottom line and business. Thanks for joining us.
Hey everybody, Wendy Sellers here, the HR lady. I'm here today with my co-host, JC.
Hey everyone.
We are going to dive into some pretty hot topics in HR, 5 hot topics to be specific, that we really want you to consider putting in your strategic plan and your 2023 budget somehow, some way. So without further ado, let's jump into topic number 1. And this is a tough one for a lot of you that are listening. It's about unions. Unions are making a major comeback. And so HR, you have to be prepared to handle conversations around unions. JC, I'm sure you've been reading about this everywhere as well. It's all over Facebook and social media and everywhere.
Yes, absolutely. You know, labor unions, they've long piqued the interest of members of the HR community in general. And without question, headlines concerning the unionization of Starbucks in New York, Buffalo, New York, even where I am, and attempts at unionization at Amazon all over the country are bringing the issue immediately back to the forefront. And unions, it could be a very tough topic for HR leaders across the world even, but especially here in the United States. After all, while they are pro-employee, they do have to also consider the demands of leadership and the larger business. Sometimes the goals of those numerous groups just don't coincide, right? So there's some to-dos that you got to focus on. Most recent statistics on union membership, Wendy, this dates back to 2017 from a recent documentation. It was released by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics at the U.S. Department of Labor in January 2018. And according to this, there's 14.8 million wage and salary workers who belong to unions. And this is 262,000 increase over 2016. These numbers are older. We need some updates, guys. Okay? So look, in 1983, union membership percentage was at 20.1%, the first year for which comparable union data is available. And there were 17.7 million union workers. Public sector union membership remains more than 5 times larger than that of private sector workers at 34.4%. And unionization rates were highest among workers in protective service sectors and education, training, and library occupations at 34.7% and 33.5% respectively. Wendy, men continue to outnumber women in union membership 11.4% to 10%. And believe it or not, black workers remained more than likely than white, Asian, or Hispanic to be union members. Non-union workers had median weekly earnings that were 80% of what union workers earned, an average of $829 versus $1,041. These earning comparisons are on a very broad level. They don't account for various factors that could explain earning discrepancies, Wendy.
You know, here's the thing about unions, in my point of view, because in my HR career, I have not been pro-union, and I have recently changed that standpoint. And I don't mean I changed it like, everybody unionize, because if you are communicating with your employees and being transparent and treating them fairly, then they're not going to unionize. And so I've always been like, well, hey, whoever I'm working with, that's what we're going to do. So why would we want a union? But of course, with all like the news, just of how big companies like Amazon and, even Starbucks and probably Twitter now and all these big companies across the United States, how they're treating people with layoffs or with maybe excess work hours, and then maybe not providing benefits and safety issues as well. I kind of, during the pandemic said, you know what? go for it. I will support unionization. If your employer is a jerk, then they should have a union on them. There's pros and cons of unions. And, what I want our listeners to realize is that, first of all, if you're doing the right thing and then communicating the right thing to your employees, they're less likely to even attempt to unionize. But second of all, if there is any type of unionization chatter at all, you have to be very, very careful, not just as HR, but as any member of management to stop. You cannot stop that conversation. There are a lot of laws around unions. Everybody has a right to discuss unions. They have a right to mobilize the attempt to unionize, and you, the employer, can in no possible way stop that. So be careful. If you are in an industry that maybe in your area or just in the United States in general, that your competitors, even if they're not your competitors, are starting to get unions in their organization, you may want to, grab a book, watch a webinar, do a seminar to figure out what are my rights and responsibilities as HR and as a manager. What can I do and what can I not do? You really shouldn't be talking people out of a union, but what you can do is say, hey, employees, sorry, we've been crappy at, communicating, but this is what we're going to tell you moving forward. We're going to have weekly meetings. We're going to have, maybe all hands on deck surveys and conferences. So we get your opinions about the benefits that we roll out, about our safety measures, about our work hours, and then of course, even about our pay too. I do know people that have been convinced to go into a union to regret it later. And then I also know the opposite too, that they didn't get a union and they were sold a bill of goods from the company and they wished that they got a union. So, I'm not anti or for unions. There's a reason why a union exists, but sometimes unions do exist just because the employees have kind of had their arms twisted and they said, sure, let's do a union. And then it hasn't really changed anything for the better in their organization.
Do we have to be careful on the way that we talk with employee union representatives? Let it be while they're organizing or otherwise. I mean, do we really need to treat it like an egg that might crack at any time?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Unions are highly, highly, highly protected. And the right to talk about a union is highly, 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 highly protected. So you cannot say, nope, get out of here. We're not talking about unions, or, you're a dumb idiot. Of course, we're not going to have a union in here. That is, not just frowned against, but it could be considered an unfair labor practice by the National Labor Relations Board and the National Labor Relations Act. So don't want to, bring everybody down today talking about unions, because it is a scary topic. And many of you that are listening may be thinking, oh, it'll never happen to me. A union will never happen in my workplace. And it only takes one or two employees to say, hey, let's do this, and then get everybody riled up. And they may be, false promising that, hey, if we get a union, we're going to get a raise and all of this. And that might be the truth, but it probably is not. So in the end, be honest, be transparent, and communicate with your employees. And hopefully you won't have to handle the union conversation, but please do, sign up for a webinar or a seminar to learn more about unions, so that you're not taken by surprise and that you're not violating any National Labor Relations Act.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
We'll be back in a minute for the next hot topic.
See you soon.
Thank you for joining the HR Empowerment Podcast, brought to you by Aurora Training Advantage. We hope you've gained new insight and strategies to navigate the HR profession. We look forward to you joining us again on the HR Empowerment Podcast.